Steele.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. Now, I just want to talk about the National Road Safety Strategy, the last one. So it's had two broad targets, as we're well aware, 30% reduction in fatalities and a 30% reduction in serious injuries. So I'd ask the officials, is it true that no state is currently on track to achieve the targeted reductions in either trauma as per our current National Road Safety Strategy as outlined?
Senator, that's at the moment, states aren't on track to achieve those targets.
Yeah, no, thank you. Is it true that we're not yet able to nationally report on or even measure serious injuries?
Senator, we've actually made some good... Sorry, that's correct at the moment, but we're in a position to have an improved database in place to be able to report on those based on the work that's being underway with the states and territories over the last few years. So
yeah,
we're making progress.
I understand, thanks. Yeah. Let's just yes and no's and move along. And between Senator Gallagher and myself, we really hope that does happen, but forgive my cynicism at the moment, not wanting to even think about what might happen if we all get our act together. Let's just deal with what we've got in front of us. That's great. Can you tell us what the department's done throughout the past 8 years to rectify this? Now you can have a go.
Mr Folds.
Senator Alex Folds, Executive Director, Surface Transport Policy. Injury data and improving the measurement of non-fatal injury is a priority in the National Road Safety Action Plans in 2015-17.
Mr Folds, I'm going to help you out with the greatest respect. Senator O'Sullivan and myself and Senator Gallagher, we formulated the Road Safety Senate Inquiry. We're very aware of all that sort of stuff. But can you just tell us what you've done in the last 8 years?
Senator, can I just clarify, on the injury data?
Yes. On the collection of injury data.
So the Austroad Safety Task Force project, which you might be aware of, is to measure the non-fatal crash outcomes, commenced in November 2015. It's managed by the Bureau of this department in conjunction with Austroads, and there are 3 stages. Stage 1 is a pilot, commenced in November 2015 and is now concluding. That pilot has provided proof of concept for a national approach to producing routine national data on non-fatal hospitalised road injuries. The pilot project needed and obtained ethics and other approvals to undertake national matching and linking of hospital deaths and crash data. That took a long period of time to get to that point. That stage 1, as I say, is now concluding.
So, Mr Folds, your pilot takes 14 years to conclude.
No, Senator. It commenced in November 2015.
15. So it's
2015. Okay. And the pilot is very close to publication.
Okay. So in answer to Senator Steele's question of what you've been doing for the last 8 years is you sat on your hands for 4 years and you started something in 15.
Well, just can you rephrase the question a bit differently?
Okay. Well,
so what did you do for the first 5 years?
So we had a pilot 4 years ago. What do we do in 2011? Because the burden of the question is, what have you been doing since 2011 to 2019? And the answer you're giving us is that in 2015, 4 years after we started the National Road Safety target, you did a pilot.
Senator, Chair, the witness had not finished his answer. If he could just finish his answer and go through the actions that have been taken.
Let's do that.
Well, sorry, but we've been around this a long time.
No, but let's do that.
Okay.
Just complete your answer, witness.
Senator, it is true that the pilot commenced in 2015. It is not true that nothing happened and nothing was being looked at prior to 2015.
Good. So what did you do, Mr Folds? Or the department? Tell us. We've laid it on the table for us. Because Senator Gallagher and myself, and you have the chance to defend yourself, we honestly believe there's been a roadblock in the department. So it's up to you now to prove us wrong. We witnessed hear me out. And Senator Gallagher and I were 2 people that thought, well, there's a breath of fresh air coming through the ministry in Mr Chester, who was an adamant supporter of road safety. Something happened. so you can defend yourself and tell us what you have done in the last 8 years since the development of the National Road Safety Strategy of 2011.
Just in relation to injury.
The collation of injury
And
data.
in relation to injury,
Going, Alex.
so from the completion of stage 1, we will then move to stage 2. Work
So
which is
I'm just going to write this down, Mr. Fold. So in 2015, right, we started the pilot. Okay. Carry on.
The final pilot report will describe the method, key issues and findings, and stage 2 commenced September 2018. The purpose of that is to acquire all the remaining approvals, to go back 10 years of historical data, 2008 to 16 or 17, and then a draft report will be ready by Q3 this year. The aim after that, Senator, is to be able to have an annual crash non-fatal database, which is linked across all jurisdictions. So yes, it has taken a long time and nobody's disputing that.
Okay.
But it is now at the point where we believe that within a year we should have a national approach and a national database going forward where we can actually have an
Okay.
accurate
All right.
injury.
So, Mr. Folds, what
Yep.
was done between 2011 until the pilot started in 2015 by the department? What have you done?
Sorry,
Senator, I will take that on notice.
You don't
because-
have to. No, you
yeah,
don't
I
have
will
to.
have to take that on
You
notice
can-
because
we'll
I
tell you
wasn't
the
in this
answer.
position.
We can,
Oh,
tell,
well-
we can tell you the answer.
Then we can't do that. I mean,
Well, no, if
the
you were
witness-
doing something,
no,
Chair, they'd say, this is what
we-
else we've been doing.
we
Just tell
can't-
the truth. You're not going to go to jail.
We can't
Just want to know that.
badger the witness. They're taking
I'm
it
not
on
badgering. I've
notice.
asked a very simple question, Chair. What did you do from 2011 to 2000?
Witness has taken it on notice.
Okay, we
Perhaps I
proved
can
our
ask,
point. Nothing.
Perhaps I can ask a question. In 2011, there were certainly serious injuries. What was being done 2011, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14 in respect to appropriate calculation, measurement of the serious injuries?
Sorry, Senator, we would have been dealing with the states and territories, including through the health portfolios, to actually determine how, try to work through options around definitions, where the data was being kept. But again, as Mr Fold said, would have to take on notice the detail of what was actually done.
And look, this is all good evidence. My point, and I think the burden of Senator Still's point, is that these things are taking an inordinate amount of time. For a country like Australia to take probably, 8 years to conclude or to get almost to the conclusion of measurable serious injuries in relation to road accidents is almost incomprehensible to the average person.
Appreciate that, Senator, and we
So
would
we're
all...
looking for the reason of resource, whether you haven't got enough resources, whether it's not a priority, or it's not your job. Maybe you thought it was someone else's. State jurisdiction. I don't know. That's what we're looking for.
They've taken it on notice. And you just
No,
have
they've
to wait.
taken what they think they can get out of on notice. I would like to know,
Well, you can't.
is there a clear lack of resources allocated to the department in
Well,
respect to...
you can ask that question separately.
And I'm asking
But in
that
terms of the reference to 11, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14, they've taken it on notice, and I think we should leave that where it is. But if you've got questions about whether you think Ms Spence thinks that the department's under-resourced then and now, that's a valid question to ask.
Oh, Senator, I'm happy to run through. We've done an estimation of the number of people in the department who work on road safety issues, and there's about 117 FTEs who are involved across the different areas across the department. I'm happy to run through the detail of who those 117 are, but I think we've also provided that information on questions on notice previously.
So I don't want to take Senator Still's time, but one thing that really stands out in this area of public policy is that the evidence says it is a very long time before you grasp the problem and get some way to the solution. Do you accept that?
Yes, Senator.
The Australian design rules, how long on average does an Australian design rule take to change? Mr Folds, you are in that area, you should know that.
Well, it can take 2 to 5 years.
to 5 years.
But it can, and it
Okay,
depends.
so that's fine.
Yep.
That's the answer, to 5 years. So if everybody in this parliament decided that we wanted autonomous braking technology in all vehicles imported in Australia, it would still take 5 years under our existing parameters to change the rule.
2 to 5 years,
2 to
the witness
5 years.
says.
Senator, I can, what I can say to you about autonomous emergency braking at the moment, and you know from previous...
Just an example of how an ADR could be
That's
changed.
right.
It may not be... It
But
took
that's-
us.
yep.
It took us 11 years to get seatbelts in every jurisdiction, and we haven't really improved much since. Would you accept ADR rules take 2 to 5 years on every item of safety?
I couldn't answer. There are 79 of them. I don't know how long each and every one of those took. We can take that on notice, but it is that kind of time frame generally, Senator.
All right, so Mr Folds, can you tell us what progress has been made on development of the next National Road Safety Strategy?
So the next National Road Safety Strategy is being informed by the inquiry report, the National Road Safety Inquiry Report, and the current road safety strategy expires at the end of 2020, and you know that there's an action plan that's associated with that. We are beginning the development of the next National Road Safety Strategy, which will go for 10 years from 2021.
We're aware of that.
The work on that will be informed by the governance review that is being conducted under the National Road Safety Inquiry. It will also be informed by the work being undertaken by the Heavy Vehicle National Law Review. It'll be informed by the results of fatigue management studies. It'll be informed
Mr Folds, sorry,
Yep.
no, I don't want to be rude, I want to move on. Because fatigue management is an area no one wants to have an argument with me on fatigue management, as you would appreciate, okay? We don't need any more inquiries into fatigue management. I'm fatigued out with the fatigue management inquiries, I can tell you now. Let me go to the inquiry, that fine report by Professor Woolley at Dr Crozier, which we're talking about. 12 recommendations, okay? Has the department been working on a government response to the 12 recommendations?
Senator, so the Deputy Prime Minister announced the...
I know what happened. It's
Yeah.
either yes or no. Have you been working, has the department been working on with the government responses to the
Yes.
12 recommendations? Great, thank you. Has the department identified actions for the Commonwealth to take to reduce road trauma?
Senator,
I think the answer to
Yes,
that is
that's
yes.
yes.
We've provided advice to government on actions that are consistent with the recommendations to government.
Good, tremendous. Has advice been provided to the government on the content of a government response?
Senator, we're doing it in... It's a work in progress, so we've been advising them on the direction with the governance review and how we're working with the states and territories on coming up with arrangements to implement the other recommendations.
But there are things that are directly in the Commonwealth's control, Senator.
Yes, I'm aware.
and we are providing advice
No,
to
that's
the
good.
government.
That's good because all we can deduct, and I think the minister's making an announcement tomorrow or something like that. All I can deduct is we've got 12 recommendations. One recommendation's been addressed. Okay, but I didn't know what happened to the other 11. I've heard nothing.
In the Senator, if it helps, in the communique from the Transport and Infrastructure Council meeting in November, there's the reference in that to the working group that was established to progress the other recommendations.
Good, okay. So when I talked about the advice to government on the content of the response, when was this advice provided?
As I said, there's been ongoing advice provided. So, for example, around the terms of reference for the governance review, there's been advice provided around the statement that the Deputy Prime Minister made in the Parliament this afternoon.
So I haven't seen it.
There was...
What was it?
It was the Deputy Prime Minister made a statement just updating on what work was being done in relation to road safety.
So I know you can point me to Twitter or something, but you want to share it with us because we haven't left this room.
We can certainly get a copy. We'll organise for a copy and table it if that would help.
Okay, well you can, but look, is it 13 pages long? Or
It was a statement in the Parliament, and I'm just not sure what time.
I think it took about 10 minutes,
Okay.
Yeah, it was-
Senator.
All
yeah.
right.
And then the Shadow Minister made a statement in response.
Okay, all right, we can leave it there and have a look at it later. So have resources in the Department for Road Safety Research and Policy been increased since the report was released?
Yes, Senator.
Tremendous. What have you done?
We've established a task force within the department, which Ms Sue Tucker is leading, and I'll get her to explain the additional
Ms. Tucker's
resources.
here?
Yes.
Oh, hello, Ms. Tucker. How are you? Sorry. Tell us all about your task force. Look, before you do, so there's a task force. Has there been any increase in additional staff or a pot of money going towards Ms. Tucker's task force? So you run us through it, Ms. Tucker.
Yes, I
Great,
can
good.
take you through that. So Sue Tucker, Acting General Manager of the Road Safety Task Force in the department. So yes, we have a total budget for the task force that runs until 30th of June this year, 846,000. We have the staffing costs. That covers the staff within the department.
Sorry, Ms. Tucker, and just so I can
Yes.
don't miss it. So the government or the department, there's been an allocation of nearly 850,000 for your task.
Within the department.
Within the
to progress
department, that's
the-
great. And you said that's for staff costs. Is there additional staff on top of the 117, I think, I was told by Ms Spence that there are employed?
No, that's included in that figure.
So there's no extra
Yes.
people? So there's people, you keep going and okay, tell me how many full-time equivalents that is or?
Yep. All right. So we have 4 full-time people on the task force. We have secondees from states and territories, and then there's supplementation with contractors with expertise in road safety, as well as peer reviewers to undertake the...
All right, so is the task force directed at addressing the 12 recommendations?
Yes.
So, all right, that's great. So in my opinion, there are many experts in road safety, but is Professor Woolley or Dr Crozier part of those experts, considering they did the fine work of the report?
So we're engaging with them as our stakeholders. We've met with them a couple of times to talk through the inquiry and to understand the intent of their recommendations.
All right, so we've got 4 full-time employees, then there's secondees from state and territory, and then there's experts and contractors that are brought in, and that's all part of that 846. So hopefully we haven't left too big a gap from some other division, but this is very important. So keep going, Ms Gross. Ms Tucker, I'm sorry.
That's probably covers that.
All right, that's fine. So the job of the task force is to actually do what?
So the job of the task force is to work through the governance review. That is one of the recommendations. But also to progress an implementation plan for the other recommendations in parallel to the governance review.
This is all the other 11,
That's correct.
even though there's some state? Okay.
Yes.
And Senator, it's probably worth noting that it's in conjunction with the states and territories, so we're working with them, and the aim is to have both the plan and the governance review at the Council of Australian Government, the Transport Infrastructure Council, at its first meeting this year.
Yeah, that's in, did you say June or something?
That's when we expect it to be, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just ask, how many people do you have working on vehicle compliance?
About 67 from memory, I think.
67. And how many people you've got in this other section?
In the task force?
Well, in terms of pure road
Another
safety.
50, another 50 on top?
Yes.
That's up part of the 117, those 67? Yeah.
Okay. So you've got 67 on vehicle
57, I
compliance.
beg your pardon, Senator, yep.
57 in vehicle compliance. Now,
Vehicle safety standards,
are
yes.
those the people that are working on these 2 to 5 year ADF rules?
That's correct, Senator, but the work of the Vehicle Safety Standards team will also feed into the work that Ms Tucker's referring to. So, for example, one of the recommendations
gotta
is
be.
around
That's right.
increasing the take-up of new technology.
Yep.
So,
The gist of this, Senator, is we're having a crack with the states at a push to get to the next tick and really try and break
Right.
through these 12 recommendations.
Yeah, I
So we've got them on
understand
board, we've got them in there, we've got them in
They've
the
got their
department.
sleeves rolled up and they're on board, they're not arguing and doing the
Because
state things.
you know from your experience that a big part of this is getting all of the jurisdictions working together.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say there was good intent at the November tick, and so we're going to continue our normal work, which is the work that we do in vehicle safety standards, but this is just a push to try and get these 12 recommendations moving. I feel your frustration about working across many jurisdictions, but they are collaborating with us this time, and we feel we're going to have a decent crack at the June tick.
What I want to dig down to, Mr Kennedy or Dr Kennedy, is you have 57 people working on ADRs and the like. I mean, how relevant is that these days that we don't make a single passenger vehicle car in Australia? How relevant is that 57 people working on ADR rules, which from my questioning look to be assessing whether autonomous braking technology is okay or not, when we have jurisdictions as big as the European Union and the United States mandating those standards? We have 57 people taking 2 to 5 years to tick off the European Union or the United States work.
Sorry, Senator, just to clarify, the work of the Vehicle Safety Standards team goes beyond just making of the ADRs.
How many people do you have working on the ADRs?
Look, I might turn to Ms Nyakangama.
About 8 in total, and that includes the
Can you just
ADR
introduce
development Sharon Nyakangama, General Manager, Vehicle Safety Standards Branch. I have currently have 8 FTE working on ADRs overall.
Okay.
That includes both the new ADR development program and the harmonisation and maintenance program that we also
So
undertake.
what do the other 49 people do?
We assess vehicle models against the ADRs to give them type approval. So we make about 30,000 administrative decisions a year. We administer the Motor Vehicle Standards Act. So we don't just make ADRs, we assess applications for vehicles as being compliant against the ADRs.
So if I am Toyota and I've just made allegedly the safest $22,000 car in the world,
Yes.
when it first comes to Australia, the team of people in vehicle standards assess whether that is good enough to come to Australia. Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct.
But isn't
Against
that a
it.
little superfluous? Like, you know, Toyota are a global company. If it's good enough for the European Union and the United States, why are we double ticking?
A regulatory burden reduction measure is that we acknowledge we have mutually recognised approvals that have been granted to that vehicle against the harmonised standards that we accept. So we will look at evidence of approvals to each ADR. It's not the whole vehicle. That's another deregulatory measure that we're looking at further later this year. So for every element that has an ADR, all 90 plus of them, there are now. So whether it's the lighting, whether it's the braking, whether it's the glazing, the crash protection standards, every single one of those tests has a test report and it will have an approval and they get submitted to us to assess.
I'll hand back to Senator Steele with this.
So
if I can import a Great Wall of China ute that goes to ANCAP and fails so miserably that the people at the test centre say to us, we have never seen such a catastrophic failure in terms of testing, what do our people in vehicle compliance standards, what do they do with those cars? How do they get here and how do they get on our roads?
the test evidence submitted met the ADRs that applied to the vehicle. So
And yet
as
when it was
we've explained
tested
before,
by-
the ANCAP assessment star ratings are star ratings above the ADR minimum standard.
ADR standards are very poor there.
No,
Too low.
I'm sort of in Monty Python world now, so a really safe car gets checked before it comes in, and a really poor car gets in straight through. What are we actually doing with these safety compliance people? Are they able to say, the Great Wall of China car, fix your game up? Because that's exactly what happened. When it failed at that test, they went back to the plant and fixed it up. Why have we got 57 people who are not doing that?
Sorry, Senator, I think it's not as though there is a simpler path that the Great Wall of China Ute went through. What Ms Nyakangama is saying is that they're both, we have advice that's given to us which because of the bilateral agreements that we have in place, we don't have to redo the assessment. Is that correct?
That's right, but we still have evidence submitted against every ADR. So whether it's a test a vehicle has been undertaken against the test rules set out in the Australian design rules, or it's a test evidence report that says it's passed against an equivalent standard that we accept and acknowledge. Each one of those will be a piece of evidence that the vehicle has been submitted to a test and passed.
Well, my question to the department is, do we still need the ADR regulations?
Yes.
Why?
Because we need a standard to assess everything before it enters the Australian market.
But you've mentioned that under bilateral agreements we're not able to do that with the Great Wall of China cars.
No, so I don't know that, I wasn't in the department when that vehicle was assessed.
Well,
but,
sorry, then
yeah,
I
but
think
but
the Deputy Secretary certainly said that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Senator.
the evidence that's submitted against every single ADR that applied to that vehicle would have been indicated that it passed either an ADR or another standard that we acknowledge as being at least as equivalent, not less than, at least as equivalent as the ADR that applies to that category. And I mean, I think at the time that was a light commercial vehicle, and we've made significant increases in the safety standards that apply to light commercial vehicles. They have better crashworthy protection standards now, and they also have ESC is now mandatory on those light commercial vehicles.
Senator, to go back to your earlier comment, I do think ADRs are a crucial part of the safety framework, and I agree with you that, as colleague has been outlining, where they've been assessed elsewhere or ticked elsewhere, that's great. We should take it into account and move quickly. But I do think it is an important part of doing our best for safety for Australian consumers to assess vehicles coming into this country against these ADRs. Now, if your question is, we think you should have more ADRs, which I think you are arguing around autonomous emergency braking, well, that's a genuine question, but I do think that the ADRs are an important part of the road safety toolkit. They're not the only thing, but they are.
I would accept that we need people on compliance and safety. What I don't accept is that we take proven technology and take 2 to 5 years to prove it, and we take a weaker standard of a car, bring it in, smash it against a wall at 60 kilometres an hour and say, oops, that one shouldn't be here. We need to improve our game. That's counterintuitive. One or the other. Either you knock them all back, or you can't refuse to mandate proven technology and then let cars in with no safety, which you've done with the Great Wall. That Great Wall ute was a catastrophic failure.
So look, I'll go this way. I'd suggest this. Look, and I'm not running defence for anyone. The officers have to work with the crud rules that they've got. The truth of the matter is we dumb cars down to bring them into this nation, and for some reason us Aussies, through whoever, think that we're so much smarter than the Americans and the Europeans because a kid's head going through a windscreen doesn't hurt as much if it's an Aussie as opposed to an American. Is that what you reckon? Anyway.
Let's do that. Let's do that technique over.
No, I'm sharing the frustration with me old mate here. I agree. You know, but you're dealing with the bulldosh you got until
when
there's
you're both cranky at the same
political
time,
guts to stand up and say we're
unbearable.
going to make these cars safer and we're going to lift our standard.
But there is
We're
a
not at the
serious
top of the
question
rung of the
whether
ladder.
the ADRs and the compliance is serving our best interests.
Oh, I can answer
There
that.
is
Of
a
course
serious
it's not.
question about that, Dr. Kennedy.
Well, it's not.
The current operation of the ADRs and compliance, whether
with you
that's
on this
in the
stuff,
national interest, as we do not have a manufacturing base to, for want of a better word, protect, and we're not nimble enough to actually accept proven technology quickly enough. And I think that's a recurrent theme.
I guess, Senator, my point was, without ADRs, any number of cars could come into the country that go to other countries that I don't think the Australian public would accept as safe. You outlined one that you felt wasn't, which was the Great Wall of China ute or dual cab, I think. I'm not saying it's a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think ADRs for now and into the future will form an important part of that system, and whether we need to do that more effectively is a genuine question that we are constantly engaging ourselves with. We share your passion in this area, and we're not by any means saying it's finished, but we wouldn't. we do think ADRs are an important part of the system.